This video is made to get you up and running in Adobe Illustrator. First things first, got to open the program. So on a Mac, what I like to do is just go to the magnifying glass and start typing in whatever it is I'm looking for. And you can see it only took one letter there for the computer to say Adobe Illustrator. So yes, that is what I want. Now on a PC, that may be a little bit different, but I'm assuming you'll be able to figure out how to open up a program. Once you get it on the dock, and this probably only applies to a Mac again, you can right click or control click on the icon and go to options and select keep in dock, and then next time you go there you won't have to go through the magnifying glass search again. There really isn't much difference if you're on a PC, and I will try to show mostly menu items. And if you're the kind of person that likes shortcuts, then when you go up to the menu, it'll tell you what the shortcut is. So then just write that down. Also, if ever I do something and you can't figure out how to do it on your computer, Google is the king for that. And I'll probably show you some searches as we go on Google, but I like to nowadays make sure that I'm picking up the information from Adobe's site, because their site has become really good with helpful instructional information. One of the things that is different on a PC is if you ever want to change something in preferences, you go to edit and then find preferences here, whereas on a PC, or I'm sorry, on a Mac, it's under Illustrator, whatever the name of the program is, and then you'll find preferences. We're not going to change preferences much, if at all. I want to try to keep this video pretty concise and just show you the main ways that I do, or most graphic designers do things in Illustrator. But you'll find that there's many ways to do the same thing. And as soon as you start getting good at this, look for other options. Either take like a course in LinkedIn Learning, Against the Clock, if you're in my digital media class, has some good information. And then of course, Google searches. Adobe makes a major update to the Creative Cloud programs, usually about once a year, and then fixes throughout the year. So if you're looking at my video and your screen looks a lot different and you just can't figure it out, of course, shoot me an email and let me know, because everyone may be having the same problem. But otherwise, try Googling it. And if it's something real simple that maybe you were just missing, fine. But if you Google it and you get the answer, still let me know that if it's a major thing that everyone would benefit from. All right, so to open up a new document, you're going to want to go to the main menu, File, New. And if ever you see this, if you're following along with my notes, this means like sub-menu items. So that means go to the File menu, and then when you see that, that means go to New. So let's do that. And you're going to find that the default that it opens up with is kind of similar to that anyway. But let's see this. So File, New, changes a little bit. You have some of the same options here. One thing that I discovered recently is that you can end up with a really odd looking artboard, basically the interface in the program, if you accidentally have this selected when you go to make a document. So to be on the safe side, just click Print, and then I rarely draw from these presets. And then I just go over here and start dialing in the document that I want. Most of the time you're going to want to work in inches, so I just change that right off the bat. And then let's say that we want an 8.5 by 11 document. If that came up by default, fine. If not, you can just swipe your cursor across here and put in the information. If you decided, no, you actually want the width to be 11 and the height to be 8.5, then you can flip-flop this orientation thing here. Now, for probably the last dozen years, you have an option of having more than one artboard in the program. So just to show you what that looks like, I'm going to switch this up to 2 artboards. We're not going to worry about bleeds right now. I'd say more often than not now, you probably want to be working in RGB. You'll probably learn more about that in a specific class. Raster effects at a high 300 PPI is good. Now, there is one thing that you'll hear me harp on about in a lot of my classes, and that is don't show me like two designs that are really close to each other. I like to be able to get my eye around them. So I don't want the artboards right on top of each other, so to speak. So I'm going to click on more settings here. And you can see right now the spacing between the artboards is like a fraction of an inch. Let's change that to 2. Hit the tab key and you can see that it changed that to inches. And that's all we're going to worry about for right now. We're going to click Create Document here. And then you can see here's an artboard, here's another artboard. A lot of times at the bottom of the screen, you'll see something like this. And if I click over here in the second artboard, you can see that number changes to 2. So that lets me know which of the 2 artboards I'm dealing with. I'm going to do Command minus. Now on a Mac, that's probably Control minus. But just experiment with what's known as the modifier keys. So you'll have a control key, and if you do control minus, like right now I'm doing that, nothing happens. If I do command minus, this zooms out. But what I want you to see is there's a lot of room in this program for a ton of different artboards, which is kind of nice because you can work on a zillion different variations of something in the same document. And you can work basically anywhere in this darker gray area. At least that's the way it shows on my computer right now. And then I'm going to do, well, actually I could do command minus to come back in, but why don't I show you a nice tool here, shortcut. If you go over to about here, now yours could look different because these are known as tools over here. And sometimes a tool is housed with many different tools. So if I hold down the mouse, you can see these 3 different tools are in here. So if I hover over hand tool, then it's the hand that shows up. So that's potentially confusing when you're getting new to the program. But what I wanted to show you is if the hand tool is the one that's selected, you just simply double click on it and it will bring you right smack dab into the middle of the last artboard that you were on, which in my case was artboard number 1. So if I command minus out a little bit, you can see there's the other artboard. Just want to show you, just so you know if this ever happens to you, because the first time I saw it, trying to help a student out, I had no idea what was going on. So if I go File, New, and you accidentally have this film and video option set up, no matter how you set this up, when you go to create a new document, you get something that looks pretty bizarre here. And there's actually 3 different things that you would have to turn off or change to get back to a normal looking print document. So my best advice on that would be to just quit it, go back, File, New, and this time just make sure that print is checked and you won't get all that weird stuff happening. Then we should have a quick talk about what is Illustrator, what's it for. Illustrator is for vector artwork, primarily. Now, in order to explain the difference between vector artwork and the other major artwork that you would use in digital media, raster-based artwork, let's first take a look at a photograph. So I'm going to go into another program here, and I'm going to zoom in, and we can see that a photograph, when we get up close enough to it, we can see that it is made up of a bunch of tiny little pixels, right? So another word for raster image is bitmap. So you've got, like, you could say a little bit here and it's on a map. So, you know, this is 1 million and something over this way. You know, I'm exaggerating numbers, a couple thousand to the right and a couple hundred down, or whatever the case may be. The negative thing about bitmap images is that they break down. So if I wanted to put this image on the side of a bus, if somebody got close enough, they're going to see this rather than seeing this. So the name of the game here that we're talking about is resolution. Images, photographs, bitmap images, whatever you want to call them, have a limited amount of resolution that's based on how many pixels tall they are by how many pixels wide they are. So that's your raster image. Whoops. Your vector-based image, on the other hand, can be scaled without any quality issues. So vector graphics that you primarily do in Illustrator are very good for logos and things like that that you may use very tiny on a business card but may need to blow up to put on a bus. Now in Adobe Illustrator with vector-based work, I can take the same piece and make it way, way bigger, and it doesn't break down. We don't start to see pixels along the edge just because it gets larger and larger and larger. Also, this probably take up the same amount of computer memory, where if you have a much bigger image that you shot with a really good camera as opposed to a smaller image that you shot with an old cell phone, this one's going to take up a lot less memory. All right, so let's make some basic shapes in Adobe Illustrator together. I'm just going to click on these and delete them so we can start together. So over here, I'm going to click on this default, and what that does is it changes me back to the default state where I have a white fill and a black stroke. So what does that mean? Well, let's go up here about 4 or 5 down. You can see that right now mine's set to the ellipse tool. I want just the rectangle tool. So I'm going to hold that down with, put my mouse over the top, hold my mouse down, and it shows me all the things that are housed there. Then with my mouse still down, I'm going to roll over the rectangle tool, release my mouse, and now I have the rectangle tool. So now if I take my cursor and move it over here and click and drag, I'm going to get a rectangle. If I do that one more time, I'll get a different looking rectangle, and so on. So now back to this. What does that mean? That means that the inside of this is filled with white and the outside has a black stroke on it. If we change the color of this and try that again, it's going to change for what we draw, but if I still have this selected over here, because it was the last thing I drew, it's also going to change that. So I'm going to leave it like that just so you can see. I'm going to double click here and it brings up this color selector. I can change the overall hue with this slider here, and then I can pick whether I want a very light version of this color, whether I want a darker version, and if I'm over here to the left, it's going to be very unsaturated, and if I'm over here to the right, it's going to be very saturated. So that's going to be the new color of my fill, and when I click on OK, you'll see that that's the case, and like I said, it changed the one that was there. But now, if I draw out a new one, everything new that I draw will be blue with a black stroke on it. Let's say that now we want a green fill and a red stroke, but we don't want, when we make our changes, for it to affect the item that's already on the screen. So what that means is we need to deselect this, and you can tell that this is the one that's selected because it has these kind of surroundings. So an easy way to do this is you just simply go up to this, what's known as the selection tool. Click your mouse on it so that now the active tool becomes a selection tool. If I click anywhere but on this item, it will be deselected. So if I click into nothingness, the selection goes away. Even if it's selected and I click on something else, the selection goes away from it, but now this becomes selected, or this becomes selected, or this becomes selected. So I'm just going to click on a blank spot in the artboard so that nothing is selected. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to dial in green for the fill. Now to change the stroke color, what I need to do is bring it forward. So if you notice, this fill is sitting on top. Now when I click the stroke, it jumps forward. Now I can do the same thing, double click on it, bring me into this color picker, and I think we said red, so let's slide this all the way up, pick over here, click OK, and then I need to switch over now to the rectangle tool again, and then I draw out my rectangle, and if I want to deselect that again, quick easy way to do that, click on the selection tool, click on the canvas, and if I want to zoom in, see what this looks like right at the corner, I'm going to go over here. Remember where the hand tool, we learned earlier that the zoom tool is also in there, and I can click and drag near that corner. It's kind of a what they call a scrolling zoom feature, and we can see our green fill and our red stroke. Now let's talk a little bit more about zooming. So you have the modifier key, which on a Mac is Command. So you hold down the Command key and minus, which again on a PC may be Control, or Command plus. Those are great ways for getting in and out very quickly. And then you have this zoom tool. And a click and a drag brings you in. If you hold down the Option key, also known as the Alt key, you can see that inside the cursor looks like a magnifying glass with a plus. When I do that, it changes to minus. And now when I click and drag to the left, it gets smaller. Now when I release the Option key, it changes back. And again, one of my favorite things is when I get in so far on something, I like to just go over here, double click on the hand tool, and it brings me into perfect focus on my last artboard. And so I've showed you what happens if you double click on the hand tool, but the other thing that the hand tool is useful for is if you actually click on it, not a double click, but a single click so that it is now your cursor. If you click and drag, you get to move around through your entire document. So I could move over here to this artboard. So I'm just clicking, dragging with the hand tool. Let's talk about saving. Once you have a masterpiece here, you're just going to want to go up to File and Save. If you haven't saved it previously, it's the same as using File Save As. Now, I have the Files and More videos that were assigned early on in the class that you're probably taking. So I'm not going to go into a lot of details, but File, Save, you probably want to figure out where you're going to save it. You can save to the Creative Cloud if you want. I'm still in the habit of saving on my computer because I have my own cloud-based storage. And for this, I'm just going to go to my desktop. So we want to navigate around here until we see that. Desktop, and then I'm going to make a new folder called AI Demo. Create, and I'll just call this AI Demo as well. Click Save, click OK. Actually, let me go back into that menu just to show you a couple things in here. So this time I'm going to go File, Save As. I'm going to go Computer again. We're going to go same spot. But I just want you to see, and I'll just call this one, well, we'll leave it the same. But you can see that format, Adobe Illustrator AI. That's your default format. That's going to put the .ai file on here. If you click this, you can see that there are other formats on here. Probably one that you'll use at least sometime in this class would be PDF. EPS is one you may want to look up as you become a more advanced user. And I'll just tell you quickly, like one use of it is if you ever had to have something cut out with a laser or like on a metal table or something like that that has a computer that runs it. EPS is just the generic file name for a vector file, whereas AI is specifically for Adobe Illustrator. And then, of course, PDF is the file format that everybody can open up. All right, so we're just going to save that. And, of course, it's going to ask me if I want to replace it because I did File, Save As. And then you have the versions here. Very rarely will you have to worry about that anymore with the Creative Cloud, but in the old days, sometimes we had to save down to older versions. And yeah, that's pretty much all you have to worry about. The defaults in here are just fine. We'll continue on in the next video.